Boxing King Media, powered by BYD. Andy Clarke, we're here at the weigh-in for Azim Ohara Davies. Just concluded. What did you make of the way they both looked at the weigh-in?
I think they both looked fine. Adam was bang on, and that's something they like to do in McGuigan's gym, is hit the weight absolutely bang on the mark. I think it's a challenge they usually set for themselves. Ohara looked good. Ohara's always looked good, I think. He's been at that weight forever, and he's 32 now, so it just shows you how professional he is, that he continues to make it and make it looking good. I like the fight a lot. I've always liked it. He talked the other day, Ohara, about how he doesn't love boxing anymore and all the rest of it. And I believe him in the business sense. I think it's a hard business to love. But with most fighters, I generally find that when the bell goes and it's just reduced to that simple game of hit and don't get hit, or however you choose to go about it, they still love it. And they'll always love it until they're 85 years old walking down the street. You know, they'll always fancy it with somebody. It's just how they are. So I do expect a good fight. I really do.
Definitely hope so. You touched on it there about O'Hara's antics and things he said during the fight week. Do you think that could that be mind games? Is he trying to make Azim kind of go into like a relaxed mode, make it into a friendly mode? As soon as that first bell goes, could there be an aspect of him maybe literally gunning for him?
I think it's a mixture of different things. I think that he genuinely has probably grown a bit jaded with boxing in general. Like I said, it's a rough old business, and I know that a couple of times he's felt that he hasn't been treated all that well, but the most honest thing about it is what happens when the bell goes, and fighters all know that, and he's in good shape and he fancies his chances. And I think part of the reason for it was that he is trying to maybe lull them into a false sense of security and make them feel like he isn't really up for this, that if they go at him quick from the start that maybe he'll fold. I think he is playing a little bit of a game because he's been doing this a long time. He's crafty, you know, he's always been a crafty kind of guy, Ohara. He likes to play dumb sometimes, but he's not. Very few fighters in my experience are, you know, they all have that kind of ring intelligence about them, and I've always felt that he does. So it could be, who knows, it could be that there's not loads left after the defeat to Barroso, because that would have been a real disappointment. But it won't have taken much out of the physical tank. Mentally, he might have found it hard to get over that. And maybe the ambition won't be burning quite as brightly as it needs to be to really suck it up if you get deep into a fight against someone like Azim who's really, really hungry. But maybe it is, you know, and that's what we'll find out tomorrow. And that's why I like these fights, because there are question marks. But I hope we see a tip-top Ohara Davies, because if we do, and Azim beats him, that'll be a really good win. And a really good next step on the road for him.
Obviously, talking of that, you know, how do you kind of see this fight playing out? Is it going to be a shootout or a tactical fight? What do you think will happen?
I feel like O'Hara's at his best when he uses that nice wide stance. He tucks up behind the shoulder. He kind of half turns his back. He's got that right hand cocked. And he makes himself a difficult target to find. He does generally like to pull those shorts up to somewhere near his armpits as well to make his body difficult to attack. That's the referee's issue. He has to make sure that he's happy with the belt line. But down the years, that's the way he's gone about things. He's able to shift that weight to the back foot, draw people in and try and hit them with that right hand. And he can really punch. What he doesn't want to do is be too gung-ho. He was uncharacteristically gung-ho against Barroso, and it went wrong. Now, it's not negative kind of hanging out on that back foot, not if you're him. And he wants to tempt Azim in. And he'll need to back himself that he can take what Azim is able to give him at times. Azim, for his part, he doesn't want to be, again, too gung-ho or reckless. And it sounds like a really obvious thing to say because nobody's ever planning to be that. But if you find yourself early in the fight able to get onto the front foot and let those hands go and bank some rounds because the other fighter is biding their time and waiting, then you could be tempted to win your rounds big when you don't really need to. And that's where I think some experience of the distance fights he's had recently will come into it. So I don't feel like this will necessarily catch fire straight away. But he's got to be patient, Ohara. He's got to be patient and back his ability to pick that punch. Yeah, I like it. It's a good matchup.
Anthony Yarde coming back. What do you make of his opponent? 17-1. He's brought a bit of an entourage with him from Latvia as well. He's even got private security, believe it or not.
Well, that's always good to see. When you see somebody come with a team and come like they mean it, you know that that's exactly the situation. They come here expecting to put on a performance rather than hoping that things will go okay. Coming in expectation rather than hope. You know, there's a massive difference between the two. So I like that. I always like to see that. He's not in Anthony Yarde's league when you look at the two records. He's just not. That's not being unkind. It's just a fact. But he fancies it by the look of him. And that's a good thing, because I'd like to see him come and try and stand up to Yarde, because it'd be good to see Yarde put on a really convincing, clinical, yet brutal display and show himself to be what he is, which is, I think, a world level light heavyweight who's hovering, waiting to see what happens with Beterbiev and Bivol. We know that the IBF have ordered Beterbiev to box against Michael Afert. That's not a fight that will happen. Beterbiev won't have any interest in that. Anthony's in the top four with all four sanctioning bodies. So if the belts do splinter, then he could get an opportunity quite quickly, and he's got to make sure that he's ready when it comes. So these kinds of outings, in the past he's been criticised, Yarde, for taking these kinds of fights. You know, he had a couple of them last year whilst he was biding time and waiting for the contractual situation. He had one eye on that probably. But he knows that he can compete at the highest level. You don't need to put miles on your clock in between times, I don't think. You just need to do whatever it is you need to do to get another shot. So I've always kind of admired their approach in that instance. You don't need to prove anything by showing that you can take punches if you don't need to take them. He'll need to take them when he gets back up to that highest level. But in the interim period, take as few as you can before you get the next opportunity.
Indeed, definitely. So it should be a great fight, and see what Anthony's got to show to the Sky Sports viewers this time. Dan Aziz, Lewis Edmondson, it's a proper 50-50 fight. Got to respect Dan Aziz to come from a draw and not a great performance straight into another hard fight.
It is, but I do think it's a good idea. I think it's what he needs, because this will put the fear into him this one. That fear you need to drive you during camp, that fear of failure. Because it's a great story, Dan's, and he's come a long way. He's won a British title, a Commonwealth title, a European title. Back in February, he was boxing in a world title final eliminator, so world level against Joshua Buatsi. Were he to lose tomorrow, he'll have fallen an awfully long way in a very short period of time. And that's the fear, I think, that you need to force performances out once you've got to a certain level. Against Avoyasep, he was flat. Avoyasep's good as well. I'd seen him a lot in the amateurs. I knew he was good, and I knew that he was at the point of his career where he really needed to put on a performance. And it just wasn't there for Dan that night. And he would have told himself in the build-up, don't be flat, don't be flat, don't be flat, and then you're flat. Sometimes it just happens. So this is the right kind of fight for him. The last thing he needed was another one of them. Because Edmondson is starving hungry. He's been waiting for a chance for what will feel like forever for him. So it's a good fight for both. It's a really good fight for both.
It is. And the last thing I want to speak about, Andy, Ben Whittaker, you've seen that, so the exchange you two had maybe about 6 months ago, which went viral, did millions of views online. Obviously, you was there ringside on Saturday. What did you kind of make of the ending? And we'll talk about the ending first.
So, with regard to the ending, it was just pure rough and tumble, wasn't it? And the referee was right to give it as an accidental foul, because essentially what happened is that Liam Cameron came forward, pushed Whittaker into the ropes. Nothing really untoward about it. Maybe lost his balance slightly as he came forward. Whittaker's moving backwards. People have been talking about Whittaker pulling him over the ropes. Whittaker was trying to pull himself back into the ring. That's what that was. And then they end up going over the top ropes. They're both quite tall. It was very, very unfortunate. The referee made the right call because it was an accidental foul. So it's beyond the completion of 4 rounds. You go to the scorecard. So that there's no argument from that point of view. The referee did the right thing. Whittaker then picks up an injury and is unable to continue. And people are levelling all sorts of accusations at him, saying that, you know, he made the most of it, he made a meal of it, he was looking for a way out. I always choose to take an athlete, a fighter, at their word. If they say that it's an injury, then you have to believe that it's an injury, because they've earned that respect, because of the nature of what they do. In some other sports, and I'm not gonna.
Football.
In some other sports,
Football.
it's part of the sport, isn't it, to play act and try and get an advantage and make out that something that hasn't happened has happened. Boxers don't do it. It's an incredibly tough game that they're in. And if anything, it goes too far the other way. If anything, I think we expect them to shrug off injuries and continue when really they shouldn't. Because it was almost like people looked at him and thought, well, his bone's not sticking out through the skin, so he should be able to just hobble on and fight on. That's what fighters do. But if you picked up any kind of injury that means that from that point on, through no fault of your own, you're at a disadvantage, why should you? Why should you continue? They do, because it's the nature of the beast. So the fact that he didn't, that says to me that that is a proper injury. At the point that it ended through 5 rounds, I thought it was pretty even, but that it was going one way. It looked to me like Liam Cameron was coming on strong, and that the second half of the fight was going to be hard for Whittaker. Now, we don't know what would have happened. We don't know who would have gone on to win, but that's how it was at that point. He was fighting the wrong fight, I thought. I wasn't commentating on it, but I was watching it. It was like he wanted to have it up close with Cameron and kind of prove to people, listen, yes, I can box and move. Yes, I've got all the technique and the style that you could want, but I can do this too. And it wasn't the right way to do it, because you're playing into your opponent's hands. And you should never, ever do that, quite simply. So it was going to be very hard for him in the second half. Would he have dug it out and got the win? We don't know. But it was a tough night for him. But he'll be back soon, and I hope he takes a rematch, because I think he needs to take the rematch.
You know, I respect you for Andy. Like, obviously, after that incident you guys had online, you could have thrown him under the bus, but you gave quite a fair and honest assessment, and I respect you for that. And the thing I want to ask you is, like, him as an athlete and as a sportsman, obviously he kind of lives by the sword, and unfortunately sometimes he dies by the sword. The way he likes to do that whole brash thing, and that's the way he wants to portray himself. Obviously, he's had a lot of backlash online. You see the comments, people have like really gone in on him. How do you think he could be dealing with that at a time like this?
I think it's hard because no one can really prepare you for the level of scrutiny that comes when you have the kind of profile he's got. And he's gathered it quite quickly. Obviously, an Olympic silver medal brings you a high profile, but that's in our world, really. And then a clip of you goes around on SportsCentre on ESPN, and you've got massive names in the world of sport commenting on it and knowing who you are. And then you're at a different level. Then you're at TV news level rather than just sports news, if you like. So he's gone from being niche boxing news to being big boxing news to almost just being news, you know, across the board. And that's the big time. And everybody will have an opinion. I don't really know how you prepare yourself for that, even if you have gone about things in a fashion which would suggest that that is what you want. It still doesn't mean that it's an easy thing to handle. So I think it's been a hard few days for him. I think it'll be a hard few weeks for him, to be honest, because I like you, I've seen a lot of the comments, and I mean, they make you wince reading some of them. And it's easy for us to say you need to develop a thick skin and this and that, but how can you not take stuff personally when people are saying things about you as a person? It's almost impossible. And I don't think he's probably at that point yet where he's able to just completely bat it off, because people compare him to Naz. And you would know him much better than me, Nassim. But from watching him when I was a kid, it always appeared to me like he was one of those really unusual people who genuinely didn't care. And if you had a go at him, he didn't care. All he cared about was that tight circle around him. And he really could just brush things off. But they're really unusual, those people. Really unusual. You're talking him, Eubank Senior, those kinds of guys. Almost everybody else, it can get to you. So it's a hard road to choose to travel, that one. And I wouldn't be surprised if bit by bit we see Ben Whittaker just kind of, just not really want to, just to want to kind of make a slightly different bed, if that makes sense. Because I do think, having got to know him a little bit, that he's very likeable. And he's a hard-working pro, and he lives it, and he absolutely loves it. I think people will just grow to want to watch his fights because they actually just really like him. I think that's where he would prefer to get to, rather than this kind of love-hate, love me or hate me, you're going to want to watch me thing, because I think that's hard.
Yeah, no, like I said, I know him off camera, and he's a very, very nice young man. And it's hard to portray that when obviously what people see on camera, but I've tried to put it out in the interviews I've done with him. But one of the other things as well, this incident at the airport, I don't know if many people know this, but I was sat next to the guy who he had the incident with, because we was on the same flight. He was actually a paparazzi. So the picture or video he took, you can only guess what he was planning to do with that. But obviously things happened, and I'm assuming Ben's been reading the comments, and then he seems to take a picture of him, and then obviously it's led to what it's led to. But I think from what he told me at the point on the flight, that they agreed that Ben was going to pay for his phone. They shook hands on it, and that was the end of it. But I'm assuming he's come back and sold the story.
Yeah, and that's the kind of level that he's at now, and that's really, really hard, because when stuff like that happens, the full story of what maybe happened before or after very rarely comes out. All people are interested in is that crystallized moment in time that makes him look terrible, because that's what gets people to click an article, and that's what sells newspapers, and that's what generates headlines. The rest of it isn't important. And people will do, I've seen people doing this at first hand, mostly when I covered football, people will do pretty much whatever it is they need to do to get the reaction they want. You wouldn't quite believe what people are prepared to do just to goad somebody into giving them that split second that they need. It's brutal. It really is brutal. And that's a very difficult position to find yourself in. So when I read that, I kind of took it with a pinch of salt. You just think to yourself, well, I do anyway. What actually happened there? What really happened there? Because what they want you to believe is that here's this guy who doesn't like it when things don't go his own way, and he makes out like he's something that he's not, and a fan asks for a photo and he loses his temper and smashes the phone. That's what they want you to think. But you read it and you just think, really? Is that really what happened there? So I'm not surprised to hear that, what you just said. I'm not surprised to hear that.
They are cold facts, because I got that directly from the guy. He showed me his phone as well. So I just wanted to put that out there. So Andy, thank you. Should be a great fight. Unless you've got anything else to add, I think we're done.
No. I mean, that's it. It's great to slipstream into a card like this off the back of last week, because last week was absolutely mega. It really was. It was such an eventful night for so many reasons. So it's great to just come back to the UK and hit the ground running, because I think we'll see some good stuff tomorrow.
Indeed, we will. Andy, Clarke, as always, a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.